Welcome to 100 Yards Football this morning. I'm Vincent Turner, and I'm broadcasting live from my home here in Douglasville, Georgia. And today I got a special, an NFL legend, probably the best football player that's played in the National Football League, pound for pound. The young man is Jerry Rice, out of Mississippi Valley State, by way of the San Francisco 49ers, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Seattle Seahawks. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. Boy, doing this and following this great game of football, you always come across great players, great human beings. But this is going to be one of my special videos today because I'm doing it about a gentleman that's from the state of Mississippi. And everybody knows how I feel about the state of Mississippi because my parents raised me right. Chester and Inez Turner, who's watching this video today. And I always tell people it's something in the water in Mississippi because greatness is bar none. In a state that is really, over the history, it's been one state that people frown on. But they don't know about the work ethic of those people that comes out of their state. James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, Archie Manning, Brent Favre, Robin Roberts, Walter Payton, Steve McNair, Sterling Shepard. I don't have to say no more. But this gentleman right here, he's one of the greatest that's ever came out of the state as a football player and as a human being. The first knowledge I had of Jerry Rice, you wouldn't believe this, is even before he came on the map. I'll go back. I had just returned home from school, graduated from the University of Arkansas in 1982. So the following year, I attended the University of Memphis. At the time, Memphis State, I was going to school, working on my post-grad stuff to be a teacher in the city of Memphis. So on November the 13th, 1982, I get a call from one of my good friends. He's went on and passed, Lawrence King, who played at Alcorn State. Kudos to him because the young man is in heaven now. Passed away last year, one of my dearest friends. He said, man, you got to come to me to Liberty Bowl Stadium. Tennessee State, I always play their home games. They play one game a year in Memphis. And that year, they decided to have a game in November. But he said, man, you got to come to this game because we know what Tennessee State has. At that time, they was ranked number one in black college football. Some great players on their team. Brian Ramsey, the quarterback. Mike Jones, the wide receiver. Richard Dent. We know how his career went. Golden Tate, whose son right now is playing in the National Football League. Golden Tate Jr. Primus Bobo, who was a legend in the city of Memphis in high school football. Larry Killebrew, who played in the National Football League. Steve Turner. Gary Davis, linebacker, who's here locally out of Atlanta. That Tennessee State team was loaded, and they ended up winning the Black National Championship that year, going 10-1-1. But it was the school of Mississippi Valley that my friend Lawrence King, and he kept talking about, man, they got this wide receiver. He's out of Crawford, Mississippi. So I know what Crawford is. It's about 30 miles from my mother's hometown, which is Sunflower, Mississippi, and I know it's down in the Delta. And it gets hot and muggy down there. And the guy mentioned, my best friend Lawrence King mentioned the guy's name. And he said, man, the kid's name is Jerry Rice. And Vincent, he's got a situation, man. You might be watching greatness this day on November 13th, 1982. I'm telling you, this guy's got what all the great ones got. Ali, Peyton, Jim Brown. And I'm looking at him like, man, are you serious? Jerry Rice, huh? Vincent, I got 2 tickets. Let's go see him. Went on out there. Tennessee State won the football game. But on that day, November 13th, 1982, I came away impressed because that young man, Jerry Rice, had 279 yards receiving. And then, of course, I started following him over the years. And then I got an opportunity to see him play again with my friend Lawrence King. We drove down to Jackson on a Sunday in 1984. And I know Deion Sanders doing a lot of great things at Jackson State. And they had a great turnout last week against Prairie View in the SWAC championship game. But hey, that November day is still considered the greatest football game in the state of Mississippi, Alcorn State, that was ranked small schools against Mississippi Valley. And at that time, Jerry Rice's career had ascended on the college football level. And man, going down that Sunday, because Jackson, Mississippi is like a 3.5-hour drive from my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, and going into that stadium and seeing 65,000 overflow fans in Jackson Memorial Stadium. Think about it, I was 24 years old, the bands were thumping, and my man Jerry Rice going up against Alcorn State, and they had a superstar cornerback by the name of Isaac Hope. And I took from that day, Jerry Rice had over 100-some yards receiving, had put on tremendous stats on the college level. And the first thing came to my mind, I said, okay, can he translate this from playing at Mississippi Valley State to a high level in the National Football League? Well, you know the rest has happened. The history has been made. He got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, ended up winning 3 Super Bowls, ended up, if you think how crazy Jerry Rice's stats are, he still holds over 100 NFL records, 208 touchdowns, 1,549 receptions, 22,000 yards, 13-time Pro Bowler, 12-time All-Pro in 20 seasons. But the thing that sticks out the most to me is his 197 reception touchdowns. The closest guy to him is Randy Moss with 151, I believe. And that's a record that's not even going to be broken the time I'm living. But think about Jerry Rice. Think about this. Before he came in the league and you're looking at the wide receiver position, everybody's saying greatness was with Lance Alworth. Greatness was with Gene Washington. Greatness was with Cliff Branch. Greatness was with Lynn Swan. Greatness was with Drew Pearson. Greatness was with Al Toon. Greatness was with James Lofton. Greatness was with John Jefferson. Greatness was with Paul Warfield. Now, that was before Jerry Rice even stepped on the field with the 49ers. Then after that, you had Sterling Sharp that came on after him. You had Chris Carter that came after him. You had Randy Moss that came after him. You had Marvin Harrison that came after him. You had Terrell Owens that came after him. You had Andre Johnson that came after him. You had Calvin Johnson that came after him. You had Julio Jones that came after him. You had Herman Moore that came after him. And you had Chad Johnson who came after him. And I'm sorry. Julio Jones, I loved him here in Atlanta, Georgia. Saw him play a lot because I live in Douglasville, Georgia. It was 30 miles west of downtown Atlanta. Kevin Johnson played locally with Georgia Chick, just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. Megatron. But after going over all my notes, reading about Jerry Rice, I'm sorry. Pound for pound, he's the best receiver that ever played in the game. And I'm going to tell you this. Pound for pound, I just got through talking about Lawrence Taylor last week. He on 100 yards football. But I might have to include him as the best football player ever that played this game. And you know I love Walter Payton. I'm crazy about Emmitt Smith. I love Deion Sanders. But think about this point here. The guy did it from the receiver position. He wasn't touching the ball every play like Tom Brady or Drew Brees. Let that sink in 1 minute. He did it from the wide receiver position. Special football player, man. The best that ever done it. The skill level and the skill set. The speed. They question that A+. The hands. They question that A+, because he dropped a lot of passes first year. They question the change of direction, A+. His work ethic, A+, after the season. 2 weeks after, during his years when he was winning Super Bowl, every day. He ran 10 miles a day. He lift weights every day. Hungry to be the best, A+. The depth of a wide receiver, A+. The dodging ability, A+. The endurance, A+. The different motions of playing receiver, A+. Jerry Rice was, oh my God. Then he backed it up. Let me repeat his stats again. 1,549 receptions, 22,895 yards, 197 receiving touchdowns, 208 touchdowns overall. But in his career, it was 3 seasons, I think, was his defining moments. 1986, NFL Offensive Player of the Year. He played with 3 different quarterbacks that season. 1,570 yards that year. 6 100-yard games. In the game I remember the most, that Monday night game in 86 against the Washington Redskins. 12 receptions, 204 yards. Then in 1987, 12 games because the NFL was on strike. 1,078 yards. But think about this stat with Jerry Rice. He had 22 touchdowns in 12 games. That's unheard of, man. That's greatness at the highest level. And then in 1995, when everybody thought he was washed up, and he was fighting some injuries, and he was in his 30s, the show, 122 receptions that season, 1,848 yards, averaging 18 yards a catch, 15 touchdowns. I'm sorry, man. This young man out of Crawford, Mississippi, population of 600. He's the best football player that's played ever in the National Football League. And I'm putting it out there today. The stats, the athletic ability, he did everything you needed to do to be the best at this level. And coming out of Mississippi Valley State, the work ethic was developed there. You got to give kudos to one man that made his career and that made him understand and play at a high level. I'm going to give him love today. Archie, the gunslinger Kool-Aid, the inventor of the West Coast offense back in the 80s. I'm not going to give it to Bill Walsh. I'm going to give it to Archie, the gunslinger Kool-Aid. And he developed the best receiver that ever played the game and probably the best player that played in the National Football League, pound for pound. But Jerry Rice grew up in Crawford, Mississippi, which is 32 miles from where my mother grew up in Sunflower, Mississippi. And I know how those people work. And Jerry Rice got all his skills young because he was raised by some beautiful parents. He knew what it meant to have skills, to be great child skills. He was picking cotton at a young age, A+. He was chopping wood in his teens, A+. He was bricklaying in his teens, 15 years old, A+. And y'all want to ask why these young men didn't perform at a high level? There's something in the water in the state of Mississippi, baby. Those people come to work, and they know about greatness, and they know about hard work. Let me say it one more time. James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, Robin Roberts, Archie Manning, Brent Favre, Steve McNair, Walter Payton, and of course my parents who still living today in my hometown in Memphis, Tennessee, Chester and Inez Turner. And you want to know why? Because they raised me to be the man I am at 61 years old. And I couldn't be more proud of them and the people from the state of Mississippi and this young man here, Jerry Rice. Outstanding football player. great individual, class act off the field. And one more time, before he came in the league, he was some of the greatest receivers. Lance Allworth, Fred Belifikoff, Gene Washington, Cliff Branch, Drew Pearson, Lynn Swan, Paul Warfield, John Jefferson. Let me throw Wes Chandler in there. Let me throw Mark Clayton in there, Mark Duper. Then Jerry Rice came along, 16 overall pick, first round in the 1985 draft. And then look who followed him, Sterling Shaw, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, Terrell Owens, Andre Johnson, Julio Jones, Herman Moore, Chad Johnson. Well, my final words about Jerry Rice. You know I love music. And there was a musician in the 1950s that a lot of people don't know about, but look him up today, Jerry Reed. He died in Oakland, California, August the 29th, 1976. But he had a song out that was called Big Boss Man. Big Boss Man, you can't hear me out. When I call, you got me working. Well, you ain't so big. Just tall. That's all. Jerry Rice will be and always be the big boss man of the National Football League. The best player that ever done it. So if you like the video today, please comment and share it. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. Thank you to my producer, Mr. Logan Landers, for making it happen this morning. Y'all be blessed here on 100 Yards of Football. Jerry Rice, pound for pound, the best football player that ever played in the National Football League, Mississippi Valley State. Thank you.